A lot of people think that off-grid living is cheap. And I would say that, well, probably a roughly similar amount think that it's absolutely expensive. And the truth is, it lies somewhere in the middle. The idea that it's very cheap, I think, comes from the fact that it can be pretty cheap, you know. If you want to go buy a house these days, it's sitting around $500,000. And in some places, you can start off grid in an RV or a camper or maybe a shed to home conversion. And the upfront cost could be a lot cheaper than that. And then on the extravagant side of things, you know, the picture perfect homesteads that are more of, you see picture perfect homesteads. A lot of those are funded by large companies, and it's a large production. And that's why it feels and looks like a fantasy large production, because that's what it is. And those are the homesteads that make people believe that it's just not even possible. And while building a flawlessly perfect homestead is going to be expensive, so would be building a flawlessly perfect residential home. So here's a logical way to kind of look at the situation. If you think about maintaining weight or losing weight, it's all about calories in and calories out. And the same thing works with a budget. If you live within your means, you spend less than you make, well, then whatever you're paying for isn't outrageous. It makes it a lot easier to live within your means. Just like if you eat the right amount of calories, it'll be a lot easier to maintain your weight. You know, the real difference is how costs show up over time. And the truth is you can create your own experience. If you want it to be extremely expensive, you can make it extremely expensive. And if you want to make it as affordable as possible, you can carve out all of the extra fatty pieces that you don't need. In my example, speaking from experience, I paid under $2,000 cash for my property. What made it so affordable was buying land in the middle of nowhere that is less desirable. There's absolutely, wholeheartedly, property that is considered far better. It has possibly a lake or a river running through it, a lot more wildlife, a lot more foliage, a lot more rainfall. It's greener. There's already a canopy that's developed, such as larger trees that wind block and protect gardens. And that land costs a lot more money. So, for somebody in a tight position trying to get an affordable start, buying less desirable land is not a bad idea. In fact, there's really not many places that I could think of that you'd have a hard time surviving. It's all about homeostasis, and just about anywhere that you set up, you can eventually create shelter, water, food, power, and income. So paying cash for a piece of land, got that out of the way. Doing the research before buying the land, knowing property tax would be cheap even if I do build a home, that's out of the way. Slowly piecing together scrap material infrastructure that supported my shelter, water, food, power, and income needs, that's out of the way. Then I built myself a cabin, cash again, just with what I had set aside, each month, what could I afford, piecing it together. I spent about $13,000 to build this cabin, which is less than people spend on those half-finished sheds. That's out of the way. So with owning the land outright, owning the cabin outright, there's no mortgage. My food costs are less because I'm offsetting those costs largely by growing fruit and vegetables and meat. There starts to be a buffer and a foundation. And Now I have, calories in, calories out. You start to have a buffer. You start to actually have abundance, enough money that you can spend a little bit more to complete your projects. And this is only the way that I did it. I'm only speaking from experience. You could absolutely have $250,000 up front and build an absolutely wonderful homestead for that $250,000. Buy and pay cash for an amazing piece of land. Build a cabin like this that costs twice as much, and still be done for $250K. You already own your land. You own your home outright for the rest of your life. No mortgage, offsetting costs for food. So it can be done many different ways and still cost less than the $500,000 home that's pretty average nowadays. That's just kind of the going rate. When I was a kid, 120 grand was all day you could get a single family home for that. And now that'd be the shanty at the corner that's beat down, Just about anything you can think of, you can reframe how you think of it. And the fact that so many people are paying these mortgages that they don't pay cash for their house, they finance it through a bank, end up paying twice for the house because they want it now. And it is absolutely possible to set money aside, create a buffer, live. The trick is to just live within your means until it's in your means to buy the house. And keeping up with the Joneses is really the problem for most people. Most of the time when you see somebody in a nice house and a flashy vehicle, they don't own it. The bank does. And I did it backward. I started with nothing. People called me poor. They thought I was a loser, the guy down living in the van down by the river, But I knew what the plan was, and it didn't matter what the Joneses thought. I just continued to live in my means, living in a camper van to start, building a cabin eventually, not caring what people think along the way. That's a pretty great way to get your door into building a foundation for yourself, because then you can start to build some wealth. Some places will let you live in a tent while you build. Shelter doesn't have to be extremely expensive. Water can be as easy as hauling water or having it delivered and drilling a well down the road when you decide you can and eventually you can afford it. Food can be as easy as starting with a good storage. I recommend eating food that storing food you actually eat. I have a lot of rice and flour and beans and potatoes and onions and meat. And these are whole foods that I eat every day. And by eating what I store, I can keep that rotation fresh and affordable. Solar power doesn't have to be extravagant. I started with one of the cheapest portable solar systems you could get. It was about 400 watts of solar, 200 amp hours of battery, a cheap 4,000 watt not pure sine wave inverter. And I got by. You reduce, it keeps coming back to the same thing with electricity. Reduce all your needs with it. So maybe you don't need to run a big screen TV for several years, and maybe you don't need to run as many electronics and things. So you whittle down your needs, and then it's easier to provide them with a smaller solar system. It's the same with money. You stop spending so many little fees on things, then it's easier to afford them with your budget and live within your means. And income is an important variable. Today, it's a lot easier to work remotely, so there's a lot of jobs you can work. Just get good internet and work from home in the middle of nowhere. You can do that. You can work locally. You can create jobs that are not around. Maybe there's not a good trash hauling business. Maybe somebody needs to build gates. You can do all these things. You can start as a beginner. You can just be honest with your customers. Never did this before, but I'm figuring it out for the community. Support me if you'd like to. And you can do that. You can do a hybrid where you make income online and in real life. And most importantly, you can diversify your income. So instead of relying on the 9 to 5 where they can fire you, they cut that rope and you're in trouble, you can tie yourself to a bunch of different small sources of income. And if the farmer's market goes down for a little while or something happens, you can figure it out and replace that source of income. It's not a guarantee that you're going to reduce costs by moving off grid, but if you're strategic about it, you can reduce those costs, just like you could in the city. You could do the same thing slowly but surely, start out living within your means and make your way to paying off a house and living in the same kind of manner. Maybe it's easier for you to do that off grid. It's not a shortcut. It's just another way to do it. And I guess it boils down mostly to your preference. What kind of lifestyle do you want to live? And either way, you should live within your means. That's probably the solution to most of our problems, regardless.